Hello and welcome to Downs Your Way. I'm Colin Speller, this is episode 11, and we return to the theme of Tracks for Self-Isolation, in which one of the band, Steve Birkett in this case, chooses 10 music tracks, a book, and a luxury item that he would want to have with him for a period of solitary confinement. Under the shadow of further movement and contact restrictions relating to the control of the coronavirus outbreak, I travelled across to speak to Steve in his studio.
Feel so lost, I wanna cry. And all I see anyway.
So here I am with Steve once again in his studio. We've got a proper setup today, 2 microphones, luxury proper recording equipment. There's things rushing across the screen in front of me.
IMAX and all things going on.
Yeah, little sliders going up and down.
Burglars, you didn't hear that?
No, absolutely not. No, we're not saying where he lives at all. So as I said in the general introduction, this is the latest collection of songs for self-isolation, as we call it. That's all become very much more serious since we were giggling about it in the previous episode with Rebecca. But nevertheless, the principle is the same. I'm going to talk through with Steve those songs which he'd want to have with him if he was trapped in his bedroom for 2 months or whatever it's going to be, or on a stranded on a desert island or whatever.
We are in our own little desert islands, aren't we now? Possibly. Just need some sand and a palm tree.
Yes, it's just, and a passing wrecked ship to drop toilet rolls every so often. Anyway, so Steve, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
Let's kick off with song number 1.
Okay, song number 1 is The Beach Boys, and there's several reasons for this. Beach Boys were the first proper band that I got to see way back. They were doing the tour when Brian Wilson, genius that he is, was left behind in California writing the Smiley album that never got produced, quietly going mad and doing his brain in with acid, while the rest of them toured, and I saw the tour. First band I ever saw. First album I ever owned was the Beach Boys' Greatest Hits. I think this track was on the Beach Boys' Greatest Hits. So I've got a sort of long-standing admiration and love for the Beach Boys. And Brian Wilson, just unbelievable. At 21, he goes in with a score for, well, this is going to be God Only Knows, and presents this score to these seasoned session musicians. And they're going, hang on, that orchestration won't work. And he's going, trust me, it'll work. And they pull it off, and it becomes, some absolute classics that he wrote, as we all know. But God Only Knows, to me, is like one of the greatest songs ever written. It's also my wife and I's our song, if you like. So there are plenty of good reasons for it. And also, a lot of these choices are songs that I can sing along to. So there's a bit at the end of it where it goes into a 3-part counterpoint. So I'll be trying on my desert island to sing 3 parts all on my own, which would be interesting.
And when you think you've succeeded, I can absolutely guarantee that you will be mad.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a song with the title of God Only Knows as being your song. I won't dwell any further on that one. Okay.
See and your eyes is goodbye.
Okay, so we're on to song number 2 now. So what is this?
Song number 2 is another absolute hero of mine, Todd Rundgren. And story behind this one is that it was an album that I heard when I was at university. So we're going back a bit. And I could hear this album being played downstairs. And the guy downstairs, I found out, had just bought this great big huge Bang & Olufsen type stereo system, and he'd got this vinyl on it, and I could hear these songs and this noise coming out, and thinking, well, bloody hell, that's amazing. So I thought, eventually one night I thought, I'll just go down and knock on his door. So I knock on his door. He turns up sort of in his pants, expecting me to be complaining about all the row going on, and I burst in going, what is that album? I want to know what that album is. It's just amazing. So he produces A Wizard of True Star. And this is well, it's not the title track, but it's the final track on Wizard of True Star, which is called Just One Victory, which is a sort of hope song. And Todd Rundgren, bless him, plays everything on it, sings everything on it. Just sickeningly, but a total hero. And the other thing about it is that Danny, how's your father? Who's the bloke who used to be on the radio? Danny, Cockney bloke.
Baker.
Danny Baker. He did a programme on people's favourite albums, and Wizard of True Star was his favourite album. So he produces it. I mean, I'm going, yeah, go, Danny. you old Cockney, whatnot. Yeah.
Yes,
so,
you Millwall supporter. You.
Absolutely. So anyway, Just One Victory, Todd Rundgren, classic.
And is there any other context to that in terms of it, other than when you first discovered it? And there's no particular poignancy, personal poignancy?
No, just raced out and bought the album, and I've got the CD and just everything about it. And it's all of these songs are songs that I can still play and go, oh yeah, this is, I can just live with that forever.
I think that's the point Rebecca made, isn't it? That if you're going to have to live with these and nothing but these for a considerable length of time, they've got to be in that category, haven't they, really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and sing along. So, I'd be at the end of this going, somehow, someday, all on my own like some lunatic. Which is fair enough, really.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Says it all.
Goodbye.
Okay, so number 3.
Simon and Garfunkel. Well, actually, Paul Simon, to be honest. This is where I've got a confession to make, because I looked through this list and there are no women on my list. So we should be an equal ops thing, but I don't know what's happened, but somewhere along the line there are no women. But this sort of category was the sort of singer-songwriter thing. So it could equally have been Joni Mitchell, it could have been Carly Simon, it could have been Carole King, but it just happens to be Paul Simon. And I love a song that's got a back story to it. So The Only Living Boy in New York is Paul Simon's song to Art Garfunkel. And it's when Art Garfunkel went down to Mexico to film, I think was it Catch-22 he did? Yeah, it was Catch-22. And it's his sort of farewell song to Art Garfunkel. It's almost a love song to him. And you've got the references of Tom, because they originally were called Tom and Jerry. Tom, get your plane right on time, etc. But apart from that, it's just got the most wonderful choral arrangement going on in the background. And it's one of those songs that just tugs at your heartstrings for some reason. And it's Paul Simon. I love his phrasing, his writing is just amazing. So, yeah, here we go. Simon and Garfunkel, The Only Living Boy in New York.
And which album's that from?
It's off the Bridge Over Troubled Water one. An amazing album.
Yes, one of my early day purchases, I have to say, and one that I still listen to. Might just make my list, but I'm not sure at the moment.
Yeah, you could pick any one out. You should flick a coin and pick any one and they'll be genius. Yeah,
they are. It's absolutely superb music. And I followed the sort of evolution of Paul Simon in particular, and Graceland was a great album. And I love the lyrics, the complexity of them. Not the sort of thing you want to be handed when you're asked to do karaoke.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, Only Living Boy in New York, Simon and Garfunkel.
I feel with every part of...
Okay, so now we come to number 4.
Number 4 is from the band that I think may well be the most underrated band in the history of music, although people who are big fans of them would disagree anyway, but it's Massive Attack. I've seen Massive Attack 3 times now, a couple of times at festivals. And we had the pleasure of seeing them a year ago. We went over to Amsterdam and they did a revisit of their Mezzanine album. Visually, sonically, it was just absolutely stunning. And Massive Attack have a huge influence on so many bands, along with Portishead, who came from the same sort of Bristol collective, if you like. And they've had a pretty huge influence on me, although you probably wouldn't guess it from the sort of music that I write with Rebecca, or even write just for myself. but atmospherically, they are just unbelievable. And obviously, you'll get something like Teardrop will turn up on so many bits of TV stuff. It's probably the song that if you didn't know it, you'd go, oh, it's that. Yeah, when you've got like a spy drama and you hear this going on in the background, you know, those little phrases that they have, and it's just got that feeling of, oh, I don't know what it is. The other thing about it is the actual melody to this is almost a folk tune. The teardrop melody across what is sort of cheaply referred to as trip hop, but I think that's selling it a bit short. But Massive Attack, amazing band and a great song, Teardrop.
Yeah, just to remind our listener that there is a Spotify playlist that Rebecca has put together on her profile on Spotify where you can find these tunes in the order that we're discussing them. So if you want to actually hear them, that's the place to get them, or to at least get the list if you want to go off and listen to them on some other medium.
I feel with every part of me.
Okay, we come to number 5.
Right, yeah. I had to get a piece of classical music in here somewhere. And not to be pretentious. He's got some classical music. Oh, look at him. Yeah, exactly. I was having a hunt through our albums up in the loft the other day, and I realised that about a third of my albums are actually classical albums, because I was really switched on to classical music when I was a teenager, and having taught for a long time, taking kids to see classical music and playing them classical music and getting them sort of into bits of classical music in some shape or form was part of my remit. And I say classical music, if you want to look at it in actual eras, the bits that really interest me are Baroque music, which this is Vivaldi, and sort of more modern 20th century music, things like Stravinsky. The actual classical bit and romantic bit in the middle, the Mozart and the Tchaikovsky, don't do that much for me, I've got to say. But those two ends of the spectrum do. Four Seasons, well, it's a classic anyway. I don't particularly like the Nigel Kennedy version, not just because he's a Villa fan. That's got nothing to do with it. But I just think he overcooks it. But obviously you've got the four different parts to choose from. The bit I've chosen is the Summer, third movement from Summer, which is the real up-tempo. This is like heavy metal Baroque music to me on violins. And it's just something that I've seemed to have lived with forever, and I can listen to it each time, and away you go. It's wonderful.
Yes, I'm not quite sure how that's going to find its way onto the Spotify playlist. That's a challenge for Rebecca.
It is on Spotify, yeah.
Oh, yes. I suspect picking it out might be. I don't know how they break it up.
No, they have. You've got the Summer and you've got the third movement.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
It's the bit that goes etc. It's my karaoke version. No, it's an a cappella version.
A cappella version. Okay, brilliant.
I'm feeling things I could not see.
So number 6.
Yeah, Beatles. Well, you're going to have Beatles in, haven't you? Well, I have, in that they're the most influential band for me from the early age. They're the first band that I really sort of got into and followed. Not the first artists I got into and followed. First artists I got into and followed were Little Richard and Chuck Berry. So a cousin of mine gave me a couple of their albums. But anyway... So you then got the problem, which Beatles song do you choose? And that's just ridiculous. So I've chosen You Never Give Me Your Money, which might people think, well, why has he chosen that? Was sort of obscure track off Abbey Road. Well, it may sort of be obscure, but it isn't, because one of our party things when Abbey Road came out, and forever really, is to basically stick the second side on and sing the entire second side of Abbey Road. Because it runs like a complete sequence. It doesn't stop. All the songs just sort of drift in from one into another, as does You Never Give Me Your Money. And You Never Give Me Your Money it's almost like a little album in itself. It's got all these little sections that drift from one thing into another. It's unashamedly Paul McCartney, which is a bit of a shame, really. But you'd like to have a bit more of a balance, I think. But it's just a great song to sing, and it's just got the lovely piano start, which is one of the few Beatles piano starts that I can actually play. So that's another one. Although I won't have a piano on my desert island to play it with, but still.
No doubt you can find some suitably tuned shells to line up on and a couple of bits of wood. You might be able to create the necessary sound.
That now happening to me.
Number 7?
Number 7, Stevie Wonder. I had to have a vocalist in this, and I think I consider Stevie Wonder in terms of rock and pop, or soul, whatever category you think he is, because he sort of defies genres in a way. I think he's got the best voice in rock and pop. He's just an amazing vocalist, has an incredible range, has just a dynamic and a sense of feel that you would die for. And of course, he's one of these multi-instrumentalists. I've first, like everybody first knew him, if you're old enough to remember when he first started, as this blind kid who played the harmonica and sung a bit. And then when Talking Book turned up, I don't know whether that was the first album where he'd started branching out, but that was the first album that I heard where he started branching out. And it was suddenly there were all sorts of elements going on. There was some electronic stuff in there. There were blatant soul songs. There were funk songs. Superstition was on there. And there's one of the greatest, to me, one of the greatest love songs ever created, which is You and I. Where he just builds up to this amazing crescendo. It's just him and a piano and a couple of synth things going on. And you're going to hear a vocal sung incredibly well. This, to me, is the one, and he's the man. Never saw him, unfortunately. Perhaps I can, I don't know.
Well, yes, you never know. So when we come to number 8, I was looking down your typed list, and my eye sort of glanced over this. I didn't read it properly, and I thought for one moment it was a sort of local West Midlands dialect song.
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it?
But it isn't, so you tell us what it really is.
No, it's "Oh yeah, come over," which could read as "Oh yeah, come over, come over." You're absolutely. I never thought about that. Perhaps they wrote it in the West Midlands.
Well, they may have done. Yeah.
Anyway, it speaks for itself. It's Santana, and I think if you're stuck on a desert island, you need something to make you happy and have a little dance around, and a little sing and a little, smack a few shells together with the percussion section, and away you go. Santana, amazing band. Santana's a guitarist who has mixed receptions. I love him. A lot of people hate him, but whatever. But the band is just amazing. We saw them last year in Hyde Park. Second time I'd seen them. First time was about 30 years back, and they were just ripping it up as good as ever. Absolutely fantastic. And yeah, great music. Make you happy. Dance around. Smack something to it. Oh, yo. Come over.
Come over. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just the way your mind works,
That's
doesn't it? When you don't read something properly. Number 9. This has a particular context for me, this one, but I'll let you tell us about it first.
Yeah, it's Talk Talk. I was lucky enough to see Talk Talk back in the 80s. One of the finest gigs I've ever seen in terms of actual sound. I don't know how many there were on stage, millions of them. They couldn't have made any money out of it. But of course, Mark Hollis died recently, and it was a chance for me to go back and visit their back catalogue. And if I had to name a favourite band, it would probably have to be Talk Talk, which might be a bit weird. But in a way, they're not one band. Because if you follow where they came from and where they ended up, they started off as like some sort of electronic, slightly Duran-y 80s, archetypal 80s type band. Gradually started evolving into something more symphonic. And then eventually, Mark Hollis and Tim Frost-Green, who were sort of leading the music side of it, became almost this ambient, I don't know how you would describe it, ambient acoustic band. And their final albums were recorded in the dark with just tiny little noises going off all sorts of weird little bits of instruments. And you couldn't have a more exact opposite to where they'd started. So the history of Talk Talk is like a complete history of different genres, if you like. An amazing band. Mark Hollis, complete and utter genius. Vocally, he's not everybody's cup of tea because you can't hear what he's singing. So I'd be trying to sing along to this, and Lord knows what I'd be coming out with. But it's a song called Living in Another World. And again, it's a complex song, but its arrangement is just incredible. And it features an instrument that I've never worked out what it is. It's a keyboard, but it sounds like a guitar. It's not just a sampled guitar, because they can get it to feed back and they can get it to play sort of power chords and lead bits, but I don't know what it's called. So if any Talk enthusiasts who can tell me what that is, just get in touch and I'd be more than grateful to know. But anyway, Living in Another World, Talk.
Yeah, this question of context of music, I bought a Talk Greatest Hits album, which sat in my car at a time when I was travelling 33 miles each way to work from sort of spring 1991 onwards.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear Living in Another World, and it still crops up fairly frequently when my iPhone plays randomly when it's connected to the van, it takes me back to that period in my life when I'd just been put in charge of a research farm in the wilds of the Cambridgeshire Fens, and I had to travel a fair distance each way. It wasn't a bad journey, it was only about 45 minutes, but listened to a lot of music in that time, and this one featured, the Talk Greatest Hits album featured pretty frequently on that rotation. So it just transports me straight back to that period of time.
Highly recommended. Talk's Greatest Hits. Yeah.
Okay, so we come to the last one, number 10.
Yeah. Well, I know what you're saying. You said this guy who plays guitar in a rock and blues band, and there's not a guitarist in this list. What's he playing at? So this is the final guitarist type track, and you've got a toss up, haven't you? Where do you go? Do you go sort of Hendrix? Do you go Clapton? Well, I don't go Clapton because I'm not a massive fan. Can I say that? I just did. Do you go John Mayer and go something a little bit more modern? I don't know. Do you go Stevie Ray Vaughan? Definitely Stevie Ray Vaughan. But actually, I've gone for something a little bit different. I've gone for Johnny Winter, who, again, his whole catalogue isn't exactly my cup of tea. But when I first heard this song, and it was actually off a sampler album. Remember sampler albums? Yeah. I mean, they still sort of exist in a way. But going back in time, things like Nice Enough to Eat and Fill Your Head with Rock and Rock Machine Turns You On, which were like the RCA American sampler albums that turned up. These were a big deal because unless you were listening to the radio all the time, you probably didn't get a chance to hear some of these artists. So the first time I heard Johnny Winter was off the album Fill Your Head with Rock, and it was taken from the second Winter. It was his second album. And there's this track called I Love Everybody, and it's got him playing slide guitar. And it was the first time I'd really listened to somebody playing proper electric slide guitar, and it is an absolute masterpiece of slide guitar playing. I've only just discovered it's in an open A tuning, so if you fancy playing it, go tune your guitar to open A. But his voice is amazing on it. It's a filthy song lyrically. And it is electric blues done to its absolute top. I Love Everybody, Johnny Winter, fantastic.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the music. Now, the program on which this podcast is loosely based gives people the option of taking a book and a luxury item. So let's start with the book. What would your book be?
Right, I'm going to... this is a slight cheat, I think, although it isn't. I spend a lot of time watching films. My wife is a film graduate. So we spend a lot of time watching films, and one of my favourite films is With Nail and I. And every year we go along to the Electric Cinema and we have a With Nail and I day. And everybody dresses up as various characters from the With Nail and I. And it all gets very nerdy, but it's one of those films I can watch over and over again. But I wouldn't be able to watch it on a desert island. So I'm going to take the screenplay, which is equally hilarious, brilliantly written by Bruce Robinson, and it's got all the classic lines, which I shan't repeat because most of them have got sort of swear words in and what have you. But it is, you read it and it's like watching the film with a few extra bits in as well. So With Nail and I screenplay, Bruce Robinson.
Yeah, there's a great Twitter feed that I follow that gives you a With Nail and I quote a day, which is always worth a read.
Yes, my boys,
particularly in these difficult times.
Yeah.
The funniest thing to me from With Nail and I, well, not the funniest thing, one of the funniest things was when he goes into that pub and orders it. What is it? It's 2 gins, 2 pints of cider, ice in the cider, which was a big joke at the time. And then N years later, it's gone out of fashion a bit now. But at one point, probably about 10 years ago, everybody particularly in London was drinking Bulmer's cider over ice.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, truth being stranger than fiction ultimately.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the luxury item.
Oh, well, what could this possibly be? A manicure set? No, I don't think so. Something to... no, it's a guitar. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Yeah, that's it, guitar. That's my luxury item. And I don't need to say any more. Possibly take a slide with me, or I might be able to construct a slide out of something. I don't know, whittle one out of a stone, or I don't know. But yeah, a guitar for sure.
And presumably several boxes of strings.
Well, that is the one thing that I was wondering about. I was wondering if I could press it to a 12-string guitar. Then at least if I bust a few, I've got a few in spare.
I'm sure if you could take a guitar, it would be in a case, and you could stuff it full of strings and keep you going for a little while at least.
Definitely think ahead.
Have to pluck it gently so that you make the strings last.
Yeah.
The truth will shut down everything.
You've added something here on the list which is interesting because you've put another item which I think is worth a quick chat about. So you've suggested a religious text.
A religious text, yeah. Well, I mean, on the original Desert Island, I think you're allowed to take the Bible or an equivalent religious text. So, being a bit of an anarchist like I am, a mad fool, my religious text is going to be The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. I mean, be offended if you're deeply religious, but it is a fascinating read and very humorously written, and he actually sort of dissects religion in all forms in a really informative and entertaining way. Is the only way I can put it. And I could read this over and over again and have done. It always amuses me.
Yes, I'd forgotten that particular aspect, but that's an interesting dimension to add in there. So, an interesting collection of songs, a screenplay that would keep you giggling when you're not twanging away on your guitar. Steve, that's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And,
it's been fun. I hope people enjoy listening to the tunes.
Yes, I hope so too. And as ever, please, if you've got some feedback on this, write in, email us, message us. We'd be absolutely delighted to hear from you. But Steve, thank you very much for participating.
Cheers. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening to Downs Your Way. As usual, there is a merchandise discount code for this episode, and if you enter the word Steve, that's all in capitals, STEVE, at the appropriate point on the checkout at the shop at RebeccaDowns.com, you will receive a 10% discount on all items purchased. We hope to have another episode up in about 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, for Rebecca and everyone involved with our music enterprise, we offer our thoughts and best wishes at what is a difficult time for everybody. Look after yourselves, stay safe, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Goodbye.